The moon shines down. Below, a beautiful girl says she will sacrifice herself to become a sword for this young man, to gather the power of the spirits with him, to open the celestial gate. From now on, he will be her master. 2 weeks ago, in the dungeon, the slaves ran for their lives. Some didn't even have the will to run away. In a world where slaves are brought into dungeons to face monsters, this S-rank Cerberus easily sees the slaves as nothing but its food. The slaves could only run for their lives. Some people burst into tears on the spot, but someone charged forward against the crowd. With a dull sword, he chopped off one of the monster's heads. The crowd froze at this sight, only to see the vicious monster roaring in pain. It was him again. They call him the Plague God. His second swing severed several more of the monster's legs. All they could do now was gape in amazement, and in the final blow, he actually split the hellhound in two. The townspeople were in an uproar again, as they saw the group of slaves return from exploring the dungeon. The people felt disappointed that this slave named Alva had survived once again. He should have died, yet he even returned alive from an A-rank dungeon. The lord of the town had also just received the news. He was furious. Despite trying everything, even tying weights to his arms and legs and throwing him into the dungeon, they still couldn't kill him. The people relentlessly called him a monster, just hoping that he would die soon. What a bizarre city. A stranger came to this town, found it odd, and asked an old man if clearing A-rank dungeons was a common thing here. The old man chugged his beer and said that the boy, Alva, was the son of a criminal and a whore. There was a scoundrel who used to be a nobleman in this town, but he suddenly became a bandit and attacked his own town. His men looted, murdered, and ravaged at will. Then they fled this place before the army arrived. The only thing left behind was that kid, abandoned by his own parents. The stranger, upon hearing this, was indignant, declaring that forcing an innocent child into a dungeon is a crime. The old man didn't object, but the treasure from the high-level dungeon was too valuable. So these hypocritical townspeople, wanting to continue living in luxury, no longer cared about right or wrong. It's been 6 years since he was forced into slavery. Alva's colleagues believed he was the reason they were always put in dangerous situations. Alva didn't know what to say, but he knew the situation would soon end, because he would be dying soon anyway. His first battle in life was against 2 goblins when he was 9 years old, and though he won, his body was covered in wounds. The audience, however, was very satisfied with that miserable sight, so they decided to escalate the torment by throwing him into dungeons. The difficulty kept increasing, but they tried to calculate it to be just miserable enough without killing him, though they miscalculated many times. He had come close to death countless times, yet he managed to overcome it all over the years, gaining immense strength, to the villagers' disappointment. But there were still many other ways to kill him. They hadn't given him anything to eat for 5 days. The magic collar on his neck prevented him from escaping. In the end, despite being undefeated on the battlefield, he would not be able to escape the Lord's plot. The next day he went to the dungeon again, this time to fight a minotaur. The side characters couldn't withstand a single blow from it, and this monster was a black minotaur. As usual, he used his speed to counter the monster's power, smashing it against the stone wall. The people considered him a madman, as it would clearly take 20 elite adventurers to defeat that monster. But after being hit, the monster was already recovering. It seemed that starvation had diminished his strength. The weapon was too dull. With no other choice, he could only be more careful. The two of them charged at each other again. Suddenly, he saw a green lizard on the road, afraid that it would be trampled to death by the monster. But Alva couldn't lose focus. The lizard let out a cry, as if calling out to him, and as a result, the minotaur managed to grab him. Even Alva himself didn't know why he had acted that way. Could it be that protecting the weak was his instinct? So he turned and tried to deliver 2 slashes to sever the monster's leg, making it roar in pain. Then the next thrust pierced straight into its neck, finishing it off. The minotaur's head was chopped off. The slaves couldn't believe it because he acted so fast. Alva stood there, holding the lizard in his hand, but instead of praise or encouragement, the slaves seemed disappointed that he had won. The stranger felt that something was off about the villagers' story. Especially, how could the nobleman's raiding party carry out their raid and escape so easily? The old man continued that there was also a rumor that the slave boy had gained a special power overnight, and it was related to a baby lizard, something like a being beyond human comprehension, a spirit user. In the prison cell, Alva looked at the small lizard in his hand. He had risked his life to save it. Then he felt how incredibly foolish he was. Perhaps he would eat it to soothe his rumbling stomach a little. The little creature waved its hands as if trying to explain something. Alva watched intently, then gave a pained smile as he was only teasing it. He put it inside the blanket and told it to go to sleep. Then he too rested in a sitting position. It was another cold night, but the pain in his arm had not yet subsided. Perhaps the next match will be even more difficult. Suddenly the lizard poked its head out and cast a strange spell. Alva was surprised to see that the wound on his arm had healed. Impossible. This lizard can actually use magic. Just what is this thing anyway? The next day, at the arena, Alva was made to fight a golem for the crowd's amusement. A monstrous golem with superior physical strength and attack power. Each blow created a shockwave that terrified everyone. It promises to be a thrilling match. The announcer didn't forget to state that this time Alva would surely be done for. While he was still thinking about what happened last night, the golem started charging at him, and while lost in thought, Alva, acting on his self-defense instincts, successfully pierced through the monster. What the? Curses immediately rang out from the stands. As for Alva, he blamed himself, thinking he had to be more focused next time. But what he didn't expect was, the fellow slave behind him raised his knife again. It turns out he knew all along. He knew full well this guy was acting on the Lord's orders. If he killed Alva, he would gain his freedom. Alva didn't understand why everyone in this town considered him an enemy, so he would also consider them his enemies. The remaining slaves were climbing onto the golem, wanting to strip it of its valuable materials. At the Lord's manor, the Lord received news that the slave team had returned safely from exploring the dungeon. This scene was all too familiar, so he had to find another solution. He returned to the prison cell. He saw the small lizard was still there. How ironic, it could have left freely, but it chose to stay with him. Clearly it was more trustworthy than humans. Alva had never understood why his father attacked this town. His father's actions had ensured his son would never have the rights of a person, never be able to leave this place. The lizard once again cast a kind of bubble onto his hand. The scraped and aching area was immediately healed completely. Alva gently touched its head in thanks. He now had a trustworthy friend in it, and he decided to name it Ku, after the sound it often made. Then he broke the bread, deciding to share this precious meal with it. After many days of starvation, the lizard seemed very happy, and from then on, he had a new roommate. After the work in the dungeon was finished, he would return to play with it. A sense of healing welled up inside him. All he needed was to see it whenever he returned to the cell. This affection was pure and selfless. Even if the lizard was just an ordinary one, that was enough for him. But Alva also understood that his time was running out. The look in the guard's eyes already showed it. The Lord arrived and called him a dying bastard. He politely greeted him and said it was rare to see him. The old lord was excited, saying he wanted to see his final moments. Then he gave the order for the warden beside him to administer the punishment. Immediately, the electric collar shocked Alva, but it wasn't over yet. The guard even stabbed him in the thigh with a spear. He realized the spear was also poisoned. The Lord didn't even spare his own man to harm him before he entered the dungeon. One must know that if a criminal slave is punished, half of the penalty is reflected back onto their master. The Lord was desperate to kill him. After that, they still threw him into the dungeon. Then they used a scrying crystal, an item that would live stream the entire process of Alva clearing the dungeon for the townspeople to watch. They expected that this time he would surely die. The dungeon boss finally emerged, its figure tall and large, and Alva was all alone to face them. Even Alva himself had little faith left in his chances of survival. The boss swung its pestle and charged forward. A crushing blow landed squarely on Alva, but suddenly, a familiar cry rang out. While Alva was parrying the blow, the other ogre charged in from the side. He once again used his speed to resolve the situation. Then, he took the opportunity to take out the weaker monsters first. But in order to win and conserve the most stamina, he had to quickly take down the boss. However, at that very moment, the slave collar discharged a jolt of electricity. While enduring the pain of the punishment, he had to fend off the boss's critical blows. The townspeople grew increasingly agitated as they saw him being pushed into a corner. Alva, enraged, roared that they shouldn't look down on him. A monster slipped past behind him. Alva was still fast enough to block. Once again, the collar zapped him. Damn it. Alva forcefully parried the monster's mace, slashing it in half. There were still too many monsters, and the townspeople still couldn't understand how he was so tenacious. Outside, many slaves took turns using punishment rods to hurt him. But that wasn't even the worst of it. They even caught the lizard, Alva's only friend. By the Lord's order, the soldier was about to execute this small innocent creature. Enraged, Alva threw his sword. Meanwhile, the monster landed a blow on him. Instantly, Alva's blade freed the lizard, but Alva had been knocked deep into a crater. He couldn't believe Alva would throw away his weapon just for a small lizard. The small lizard was frightened and worried for him. Alva lay motionless, feeling lucky that he managed to save his friend before he died. At least it was the most meaningful thing he had ever done. That was enough. Alva closed his eyes, surrendering to it all. Suddenly, a lizard climbed onto him, waking him up. Then its eyes flashed, terrifying the horde of ogres. It momentarily caused the ogres to stand frozen, trembling, daring not to do a thing. Now, Alva could clearly hear the lizard's voice questioning him. Was it really okay to die here? But he had already decided to give up this life of slavery. He had no regrets at all. The lizard asked why he was giving up so easily. Alva was a little surprised. And angered you again. You yelled that you were just a slave, a worthless status. All your efforts were meaningless, because sooner or later you would be killed anyway. Alva held the lizard in his arms, listening as he vented that everyone had betrayed him, from his parents to the villagers. He could not trust anyone. If he had to live in such pain and suffering, then the only thing he should do was to die. The lizard declared that it was his ally. These words slightly startled Alva. It even promised to always be by his side, even in his most desperate moments, and called for him to believe in it. And now, it would grant Alva a wish. A wish? Alva once thought that complaining to Ku wouldn't help. He had been silently waiting for the day he died. His small dream was to have someone listen to a few words from him. Just that was enough. But Ku's affirmation made Alva burst into tears. His wish was, "Somebody save me." Upon receiving the wish, Ku began to glow. It glowed brighter and brighter, dazzling him. At the same time, a necklace appeared on his neck. Ku transformed into a young girl, floating in midair. The girl opened her eyes. She shone beautifully in Alva's astonished gaze. He wondered if that was the Ku he knew. She simply asked him to hold out his hand. She will use spirit magic. The dazzling light left both the monsters and the guards stunned. The pillar of light even pierced through the dungeon's ceiling. Alva's slave collar shattered. Opening up before him was a vast and clear sky with the light of the moon and countless stars. Ku said that there were many spirits like her. She told him to go and gather the power of the spirits. And now she would turn herself into Alva's sword, so her master could gain the strength to open the heavenly gate. Then Ku approached to heal Alva's wounds, and she asked if the poison in his leg was all right. Alva, still astonished, stammered and asked if she was still Ku. Ku said that her appearance had completely changed. In Alva's confused and astonished gaze, she could only tell him to first climb onto her back and get out of this place. Having said that, Ku transformed into a giant dragon, startling Alva enough to almost knock him over. Although it was clearly just a lizard, Ku insisted it had been a baby dragon all along. Ku actively pulled him onto its back, then beat its wings, which spanned tens of meters, shooting out of the dungeon in an instant. The flight was so fast that the dragon had to warn its master to hold on tight, or he would fall off. Alva was already stunned, so all he could do was try to hold on tight. First, the collar had broken, and secondly, it was his first time flying through the wide open sky. In the town, Adventurers Guild. Today, they welcomed a strange visitor. It was Alva. The receptionist said that if he didn't register as an adventurer with the guild, the reward would be reduced, but registration cost 5,000 gold, and he had no money. The crowd was curious about his presence. He looked as if he had just escaped from a slave trader. Meanwhile, accompanying him was a beautiful and elegant young lady, just like a noble. Alva started to worry, afraid that they might see something unusual about Ku. He noticed someone slipping out the back door. He went to report to his boss that a woman who could be sold for a high price had arrived at the Adventurers Guild. The boss believed that she was just a rookie, and they decided to hunt her. Time to get to work. Shortly after, the two of them were surrounded by the gang while on a beginner's quest. Alva was so hungry he was chewing on some leaves, so Ku had to tell him that these people were bandits, as he didn't even know. The fat leader threatened to put Ku through hell, but because she was beautiful, they wouldn't kill her. Ku immediately grew excited, waiting for her master to defeat the gang, while Alva had just confirmed that chewing weeds did nothing to satisfy his hunger. Look at that guy, what a large gem ring, a sparkling gold necklace. Ku declared that she never expected money to grow on people. This greedy remark made the bandits slightly unnerved. unnerved. Feeling disrespected, the bandit leader decided to teach her a lesson right away. They thought that Slave was merely her guard. The whole gang of bandits charged forward, but as they got close, Ku transformed into a dragon and roared. The entire gang was terrified. They fell flat on the ground. The horny leopard man was now sweating profusely. He had never seen a beauty with fangs and claws this big. A dragon? Damn it. So this guy is really a spirit user? Ku lightly swung its tail, knocking down a dozen men. The rest of them fled for their lives, for this was a legendary spirit. Spirit users are extremely rare, with only 1 or 2 in the entire country. So why is a spirit user on a novice quest to gather herbs? Alva didn't understand why they were screaming in such amazement, but their leader didn't want to give up so easily. He decided to order his men to target the man. Unfortunately, with just one kick, he sent 4 of them flying into the air. He believed they wanted to steal his herbs, so he told them to stop. The robbers heard this and thought he was crazy. Ku prepared to cast a magic spell. Explosive light breath. The brilliant breath swept past. A patch of lush green forest was turned to ashes in the blink of an eye. Then, she happily hugged the pile of treasure she looted from the robbers. Of course, Ku went easy on the robbers so they wouldn't die. Alva saw how miserable they were. Or perhaps Ku wanted to find their hideout to get more money. She reminded them that it was best to confess truthfully, as dragons are obsessed with treasure. Ku immediately wanted his master to go get the treasure, but this idiot was busy harvesting herbs, and there were also some other personal matters he needed to attend to, which was to ask this fat guy something. To be exact, what is the spirit user class? Spirit, described as transcendental, all-powerful beings, tied to the creation and the end of the world. But now, they are nothing more than legends. And because their numbers are so few, many people seem to think they are mythical creatures from rumors and legends. In short, spirits are the strongest life form. That is also why this unique spirit magic is extremely powerful. Ordinary magic or martial arts cannot compare. Those who can summon a spirit are called spirit users. Alva also noticed an orange necklace had appeared on his neck since that moment. The robber didn't understand why a spirit user would ask about these things. Behind them, Ku was getting impatient. Alva figured this guy still knew quite a lot. According to what he said, spirit users are very rare. So, instead of asking further, Alva decided to ask him how he knew those things. He thought Alva was going to kill them to tie up loose ends, but it turned out that wasn't the case. He immediately called him a fool, and said he would regret capturing them like this. Alva then praised this bunch of fools for being so brave. That night at an inn, Alva geared up to begin his feast of destruction, making the other diners around him a little terrified. Alva declared he was too happy to be alive, and he just couldn't stop eating. Indeed, a cheap paradise is still a paradise. Although this place wasn't an expensive restaurant or anything, Ku tried to let his master know that this was just one of the powers of money. That's right, the power of money was indeed consuming him. The landlady didn't forget to remind him to take a bath. Alva was startled, unable to remember the last time he bathed. It seemed to be as rare as a spirit. And so, after many years as a slave, Alva finally got to take a bath. The feeling of a hot bath was truly amazing. Then, the sound of approaching footsteps was heard. Ku offered to be the servant to scrub his back. Alva thought that since there was only one bathroom, Ku had to bathe with him. Ku warned him beforehand that a regular towel wouldn't be enough to clean the grime off his back, so she would use this, a steel wool scrubber. As expected, it made Alva scream from the stinging pain. Afterwards, they both soaked in the hot water, and Alva's body was scrubbed until it sparkled. Poor Alva still couldn't believe he was enjoying these privileges. Or had he died, and this was heaven? Everything had changed so quickly in just one day. He didn't want to go back to his previous life as a slave at all. Seeing her master rambling, Ku could only reassure her that everything was fine, and that her master would not have to return to that miserable life anymore, because this greedy little dragon had already stuffed a bag full of gold and gems. Indeed, Alva agreed. Then, Ku sidled up to him, asking what it felt like to bathe with a woman. Alva declared that he didn't understand what sexual desire was, a truly emotionless golem. For him, simply being able to rest comfortably like this was wonderful enough. This emotionless remark made Ku a little sad. After their bath, their inn-room was prepared with 2 beds, but Alva thought it was unnecessary, as sleeping is just being unconscious anyway. But he didn't understand. This bed's magic was too powerful. He couldn't stop marveling at its softness. Very quickly, Ku casually lay on Alva's arm, wanting to sleep with him. Alva stared at her, saying that her bed was over there. Alva figured she was used to sleeping with him from when she was a lizard. Of course, Ku would never admit to being a lizard, but Alva insisted that she sleep on the other side, which hurt Ku's feelings. But the truth was he had lost all faith in humans, so he would feel more comfortable if Ku were a lizard. Suddenly, Ku detected a suspicious presence. It was late at night, yet there were two soldiers outside, and the crest on their backs was that of the one who had enslaved Alva. They were likely scouts. Worried her master would be captured, Ku considered that they should flee, but Alva refused. Alva wanted to settle things here once and for all. Ku was always supportive. Ku also told Alva that after everything was resolved, he had to listen to the story of her spirits. Alva remembered. Now he will move forward, putting an end to his enslaved self. Ku then said she would reveal the information, so that her master could obtain the greatest power in this world. That is how to use spirit magic. Unexpectedly, that crazy town had actually brought an entire army. Under the Lord's banner, they were all on high alert for an enemy who was just one person. The old Lord declared Alva to be a child of the devil, and was determined to be his sworn enemy. This battle was 2,000 against 1. The soldiers themselves found it confusing. Regardless, the Lord felt lucky to have caught up with him. He ordered his soldiers, "Prepare to eliminate the son of a cowardly criminal." The soldiers roared in unison to boost their morale. Ku took a close look, and said that her master was way too famous. But what was hard to understand was why they had to go this far. Alva couldn't understand either. Anyway, he wanted to end everything here, as well as putting an end to his former slave self. The enemies were too numerous. Ku wanted to use magic to wipe them out in one go, but Alva disagreed. She could only tell Alva to be careful, as a person's strength has its limits. That's 2,000 soldiers. Ku asked his master if he was afraid. Of course he wasn't. He was just disappointed. Under the Lord's command, the army surged forward. Alva also began to prepare. A few days earlier, Ku had explained spirit arts to his master. He listened very attentively, but no matter how hard he tried, he found it difficult to grasp it right away. Next is how to use it. Alva needs to know why this ability is considered the strongest. Spirits use a special power called spirit power and cast spirit magic. Humans do it in a similar way. By receiving spirit power from contracted spirits, they can use spirit magic, like this. Next, in battle, a spirit user has 3 roles. 1. Strengthening the spirit with magic power. 2. Controlling magic power and spirit power. 3. Supporting the battle with spirit magic. Humans create magic power, spirits create spirit power, but the key point. For now, forget about controlling power and using spirit magic for combat support. To fight against the human army, spirit magic is enough. 1 and 2 are techniques for combat. For the time being, don't think too much about it. The approaching army is for practicing Alva's spirit magic. That's right. Then they determined that they couldn't destroy the entire enemy army in just one blow. So Alva needed to be mindful of the speed at which he could fire the second explosive light. If he was slow, he could be destroyed by the enemy. So he needed to be extremely careful. The soldiers closed in. Alva launched the first strike. They only saw a flash of light. A crescent-shaped arc of light swept across the battlefield. Both Ku and Alva were surprised themselves, but the most horrified was the warlord, because all the soldiers were scorched, with not a single one left. This was beyond Ku's expectations, but she soon realized that she had underestimated him. It was because Alva's magic power far surpassed expectations. It turned out those days of torment had forged such a terrifying Alva. Now then, the former slave marched straight up to the Lord and his aide, declaring his victory. He said that he was sad and disappointed. He said, "Have we hated each other for over 6 years? I thought we understood each other better than that. The shackles are off. If you truly want to kill me, even without Ku's power, you'll need 5 times this many forces." Then he drew his sword. The old man was still trembling violently. Considering the matter settled, he wanted to leave, hoping that he would never meet that old man again. Suddenly, the sound of applause rang out. The two of them looked over. They saw that it was a little girl and a centaur praising them. But Alva had no idea who she was. She introduced herself as Ankila, a member of the manager's group, and she was ordered to come and welcome Alva, and declared that Ku was a user of forbidden magic. These words put Ku on high alert, causing her to raise her wings. Ku suspiciously asked if they were here to capture her, and how they knew about the forbidden art. The black-haired girl was expressionless, while Alva looked a little confused. Ku knew that lowly girl well. She was Ankila, a law enforcer from the Beacon organization. Alva didn't understand anything, but he dared not move. Ku thought the punishment wasn't supposed to be carried out for another month, but Ankila said that her power had quickly returned through the soul contract with that man, and that she had already received enough punishment. Alva guessed that the punishment might be Ku's lizard form. Now Ku could only ask for 10 more minutes to explain to her master. It turned out that at that moment, Ku meant to talk about her circumstances, but Alva didn't like these intruders either. Unfortunately for Ku, Ankila refused to do as she said. Ku was about to plead, when that centaur, in the blink of an eye, approached and slapped her. Fortunately, Alva managed to catch her. The centaur declared that Ku had no right to speak here. Ku angrily hissed that it was because she had let her guard down. But at this moment, Alva stepped forward to question what kind of monsters these guys were, who spoke nothing but incomprehensible words, and resorted to violence without warning. Having said that, Alva advanced. The centaur thought there was something wrong with his head. Did he really want to fight him? Then he bent down and told the boy to know his place. Suddenly, the lowly told the centaur, prisoner number 4053, that he was the one who should know his own place, and to stop his threatening behavior. Hearing these words, the centaur clicked its tongue and turned around. It seemed the lowly was getting a bit interested. Staring intently at Alva, she put her umbrella away, and politely asked Ku if she would go with her, or if they should both go together. Alva looked over, only to see Ku with her eyes closed, not looking back at him. Then she stepped forward. Clearly, she had to do this alone. Ku turned back, trying to smile, and said that although the time had been short, she was very grateful to Alva. And just like that, Ankila snapped her fingers. The whole group vanished instantly. Alva officially lost his only companion. The worst part was that he didn't even understand what was going on. Dusk fell, and then many more days passed. He searched for clues about Ku through many towns, passing through many villages without any information. Finally, after going in a long circle, he returned to the very same old inn, sitting alone at the dining table, dejected. Still the same chef, still the same dish, but he didn't understand why it couldn't recapture the delicious taste of that day. They tasted so bland now. Suddenly, a girl came up to start a conversation. Alva thought she was going to mess with him again. She immediately called him insolent, and said he was just a novice spirit user. But then she asked if he didn't want to help his contract spirit. These words caught Alva's attention. Could she possibly know something? She proactively introduced herself as Julius. And said she shared his goal. Alva was silent, looking at her with suspicion. He wanted her to clarify what she meant by a shared goal. Want to help Ku? This remark immediately angered Julius. She berated him for the audacity of giving her sister a nickname when her name was Kuna. Seeing that the name he came up with was quite close to the original, Alva asked if Julius was Kuna's family. It turned out they were not related by blood. Lashing out in embarrassment, Julius shouted that they were sisters from the same place regardless, and she was like an older sister to Kuna. And this sister-obsessed girl had found her way here by following the remnants of Kuna's spiritual power. Alva was at a loss for words, as if he had run into a bitch who had drunk too much Red Bull. Julius suddenly slammed the table, confirming that they both shared a common goal, and that she would briefly explain everything. Ku-chan, for a certain reason, that child is in a situation where she has to receive punishment. Alva asked if it was because of the forbidden art Ku had used. That was indeed the case. The important thing was the nature of the punishment, and Julius feared that Ku was in danger. Alva froze, his face full of worry. Legendary spirits are the strongest life forms in this world, existences with very few individuals. But in a certain sense, Julius declared this fact to be false, because there is also a place called the Spirit Labyrinth, the Gate of the Sky, a dungeon where the world's strongest spirits rampage in large numbers and are concentrated in one place that is, so to speak, the dwelling place of spirits. And Ku-chan was teleported there while she was still weakened. Moreover, that place has special specifications. As punishment for forbidden techniques, it's a more brutal dungeon. To put it bluntly, Ku-chan is in a desperate situation. Moreover, if Alva intends to help Ku-chan and get further involved with that child, he'll be dragged into even greater difficulties. That's why Julius had to ask once more if Alva had the determination to help and face the challenge. Both fell silent. Julius saw Alva's fist trembling on the table. She stood up, thinking he had hesitated, but just then, Alva called her back. He said that he didn't hesitate at all, just surprised, because he had never been given a choice before, and his answer was that he would go save Ku voluntarily. Alva even felt proud of it, and even if the path ahead was hell, he still felt happy, because he was the one who chose hell. These cold words made Julius break out in a cold sweat, and just like that, the two of them teamed up. Julius cleared her throat, calling for Ankila to show herself, knowing that the lowly was eavesdropping. Sure enough, Ankila appeared, telling Julius to keep her voice down. While Julius was in a hurry to be teleported to Ku after fulfilling the condition, Ankila leisurely drank tea, saying that Alva, who had a contract with Ku, would be going with them, and that it was all according to the rules. Julius just urged them to go immediately, but Ankila reminded that there was still work to be done. Look at the food on that table. It's okay, Alva would get this done in no time. Alright, no more leftovers. And Ankila would keep her promise. After a snap of the fingers, the three of them were free falling into a tunnel with strange, multicolored crystals. Alva had never experienced this sensation, neither had Julius. Welcome to the Spirit Maze. Well, this is a place where all wishes come true, a place where all miracles happen. Ankila told them to seize this opportunity. Both of them only felt pressure. In front of them were giant crystal mountains. This is a special dungeon exclusively for violators. Ankila carefully asked again if the other two needed further explanation. Damn it, Julius was in a hurry. But the red-haired Alva thought otherwise. He insisted on a further explanation. Julius then convinced him that she would explain as they ran. Ankila chuckled, advising them to get along and not to die so easily. With that, she vanished. Now then, both of them broke into a run, and as they sped along, Julius told Alva that their goal was to clear the 10 floors of this labyrinth, but they also needed to catch up with Kuchan first. First, they needed to hold hands. Alva was a little surprised, thinking that this girl was afraid of getting lost. But no, he just needed to hold out his hand. Both of their bodies glowed brightly, and then Julius muttered, "The power to bring my lord to the pinnacle." In an instant, a red gemstone appears on Alva's necklace. Julius congratulates him, as the second spirit contract is now complete. But this idiot doesn't even know what the necklace means, angering Julius, who is in a hurry and has no time to explain. But they soon come face to face with their first enemies. Julius reminds him that he now has her power. Then Julius charges forward, introducing the spirit's power. She created an iron mace out of thin air. Julius gained altitude. She struck down with her spirit technique, Diamond Flame Break, instantly destroying the two crystal monsters. She's so incredibly strong. That is her power, and from now on, Alva must strive to use it skillfully. Alva found it fascinating. Arriving on the second floor, they were greeted by a spirit, Blade Leon. But without hesitation, Alva charged forward, wanting to prove he wasn't useless. But the beast was no fool. It intercepted him. Luckily, she pulled him up into the air in time, and reminded him that a spirit user is a support class meant for the rear, not to charge forward like that, and that the job of fighting was up to Julius. With that, she launched another extremely powerful strike. The monster was blown to bits. Julius went on to remind him that spirits are much stronger than humans, so he could rest assured and let her provide thorough protection. However, Alva's previous action left Julius a bit confused, because he had clearly dodged the spirit's attack before she came to his rescue. Alva wanted to say something, that humans in this role are just an obstacle or redundant. Julius rejected that viewpoint. She did say that, come to think of it, about the roles of spirit users. 1. Enhancing spirits with magic power. 2. Controlling magic power and spiritual energy. 3. Supporting battles with spirit techniques. Julius confirmed, and the first thing they needed to focus on was item number 1. Enhancing spirits with magic power. Spirits can use spirit techniques with spiritual power, but conversely, they can't produce magic power. That's why spirits need to make a contract with humans. They rely on their master's magic power to become stronger. That's right. Julius cheerfully began a demonstration to help Alva understand better. Now that they had formed a pact, a connection of spiritual power existed between her and Alva. Feel that connection, control it, flow your magic power and enhance me. The next monster appeared, Spirit, Metal Crystal Golem. Julius shouted, "Match my attack, this one's more troublesome than before now." Alva raised his hands, and mana began to radiate from them. Julius took a running start for a high jump. They both focused their power at the same time, merging them together. But unfortunately, her attack was repelled. Julius was slightly disappointed, while Alva was still trying to practice properly. In fact, he had only managed to focus mana into his hands. They were still lacking something, so Julius had no choice but to fight the monster barehanded, until it shattered into tiny pieces. And this was the assignment the inept student Alva had to complete all the way to the 6th floor. The hot-tempered Julius started to get annoyed. She vented her frustration on the carcass of a fanged grasshopper, saying she had not yet reached her true form. It turns out she, just like Ku, had used a forbidden art and was now weakened. The two of them continued continued to run. Julius reiterated that being weakened while traversing the Path of Atonement dungeon was a form of punishment. Now Alva understood as well, but she was afraid Alva might misunderstand, so she further explained that Ku had used the forbidden art to protect everyone, not for personal gain. In short, what they needed most right now was power. It was just a spirit, a chameleon frog. Magic power enhancement from spirit users is absolutely necessary. Therefore, Julius relied entirely on Alva. They reached the 5th floor. Other than a lake and some crystal fragments, Alva saw no sign of any enemies. Julius said the place was a safe zone and looked down at the remains of an old campfire, believing that this could be a trace Ku had left behind. But seeing how exhausted she looked, Alva wanted them to rest for a bit. But since Ku's condition could be far worse than Julius's, as the forbidden art Ku used was more powerful, Julius felt there was no need to rest, and that they should continue searching for her as soon as possible. Sure enough, when he met Ku, she was just a tiny lizard, and the greatest challenge they faced was on the 10th floor. There is an event that normal dungeons don't have, a duel with the sinners, prepared by the Beacon organization. The enemy is also a spirit user. It's called the Purification Duel. As Ku's older sister, Julius must protect her younger sister at all costs. Julius's words made Alva even more worried. And over here, this doting sister wasn't doing much better either. She was running out of power. Then Julius decided that the two of them should press on to the 6th floor. This floor's boss is a spirit bone ogre, the first boss with long-range attacks. Julius uses a mace, knocks its nose off, while Alva tries to practice. His weakness is that he can't use magic. After countless battles as a human, his combat ability and magical power are very high, even if he says so himself. But what chance would a slave have to learn magic? He lacks the skill to convert his magical power into spells. He used Ku's spirit art, but that was just borrowing spiritual power. Faced with Julius's worsening plight, Alva wanted to do something. Suddenly, Alva warns her about a monster appearing from above. The mole unleashed its slashes. Alva rushed forward, using himself as a human shield. Damn it. Fresh blood splattered. Meanwhile, at the 10th floor arena, Ku was at a disadvantage, kneeling on the ground. Two figures were looking down from above. Ku's battle. She was struggling to hold on in the purification duel. Her opponent was a sword crystal golem, and at the command of the inmate, it lunged to attack her. Ku used spirit technique, explosive light transformation technique, trying to block the deadly slash. A burst of light exploded. The monster seemed to have been defeated, but Ku had barely had time to catch her breath when the inmate above cast an enhancement spell, directly strengthening the monster below. The monster became stronger and larger than before. Ku could only use light bullets to fight back once more, but this time it was no longer effective. The monster seized the opportunity and lunged forward, knocking her away. Ku slammed into the wall. The prolonged battle had already left her exhausted. She knew that using more magic at this point was meaningless, but she still tried to find a way to counter his enhancement magic. A match prepared by the Beacon organization, where the challenger must fight a spirit user. Spirits can only display their true power by contracting with humans. In other words, this conquest of Ku's is completely hopeless. A spirit user's enhancement magic is truly troublesome. The enemy now has 4 spirits and a centaur. The bearded man in the prison uniform muttered that he had already killed 9 people in this match, and only needed to kill Ku to be free. His crimes with the Anger Greed gang will be no more. Ku remembered that it was the bandit gang she had encountered. It turns out this guy is a high-ranking member of that organization. This bandit gang operates in both the human and the spirit worlds. That's why the fat guy had such a thorough understanding of spirit users. Enough with the chit-chat. He decided to finish off Ku. The green lizard lunged forward. The prisoner continued to enhance his magic. With its formidable strength, the Cyclops swung a mighty club. Ku could only struggle to hold on. She switched her target to the crystal monster. Performs a light enhanced kick. She guessed correctly. The other guy could only enhance 2 spirits at the same time. As long as the monster wasn't enhanced, her attack would be highly effective. The centaur believed she was just making a futile effort, because the enhanced spirits were still overwhelming her. Ku had to fight off multiple targets at once. Meanwhile, the arrogant centaur began to make his move. The lizard charged from behind. Ku braced herself. Suddenly, the spot where she stood exploded in a blinding light. She kept her balance, then used her speed to pursue the lizard, grabbing it by the neck and taking it down in an instant. The centaur above drew his bow, firing an arrow of light. The arrow struck Ku in the back, paralyzing her. She collapsed afterward. The prisoner gloated that they had finally taken down another one. Cyclop rushed in to finish off Ku. She was completely out of strength, when suddenly an iron mace blocked the blow. Fortunately, Julius had arrived just in time. The two of them up high were stunned. Ku was even more surprised, because the two arrivals were the two people she trusted most. Julius and Alva. They praised her for a job well done. Ku didn't understand, especially her master. He had already gained his freedom. Why not go and enjoy that free life? Alva said it was only for one thing: food. The food back then was really good, and now he was here just to invite her for a meal. That alone was enough. Ku's eyes glistened. This idiot could actually make her cry so easily. That prisoner didn't know who he was, but anyone who stepped out to protect the spirits was just unbelievably stupid. Ku shouted, telling him to hurry and grant her enhancement power, but this dunce hadn't mastered that skill yet. Ku was a little surprised, because if he hadn't mastered that skill, how could he have gotten all the way here? Only Julius understood, telling Ku to rest assured. The crystal monster unleashed its spirit technique, /wave. Alva widened his stance, gripped the sword firmly, and brought it down in a single strike, instantly cleaving the monster in two. What the? Everyone was dumbfounded. His slave collar had been removed, so the curse on him was weakened. Impaired vision, reduced speed, poison and debilitation, weakness 2, the curse of diminished muscle strength cast at the same time, loss of strength, painful illusions, nothing, reduced magic power, reduced stamina 2, the curse of a suppressed immune system 2. Right now, Alva is the strongest, the freest he has ever been. Alva's challenge: is it true that an ordinary person cannot defeat a spirit? Such words are blasphemous, but what just happened? Let's test it. Earlier, back when Julius was ambushed by the mole, it swung its sharp claws, and Alva used his own body to block the attack for her. But the surprising thing was, the fat mole was cut in half. Julius was surprised, because the monster was actually killed by Alva's sword. She recalled the most basic knowledge. Spirits are the strongest race in the world. Humans cannot defeat them. Even Alva couldn't believe he had sliced it in two. Now the Cyclops was trying to roar to show off, but it was still sweating profusely. The two girls behind are watching intently. Alva is charging forward, about to prove a harsh reality once again. The prisoner couldn't believe his eyes. The centaur couldn't believe it either. Who the hell was that guy? The prisoner ordered the centaur to knock an arrow with all the energy he had. The centaur felt a bit insulted. Did he really have to use his full power just to face a single human? The prisoner was certain that guy had to be killed without mercy. With his years of monster fighting experience, Alva observed his opponent carefully. He assessed that the eye on its forehead might be its spirit skill. He soon realized that the monster's perception and reaction were linked to that very eye. But its drawback was that its weapon was too heavy. It was easily overwhelmed by Alva's speed and sliced into pieces. Alva landed casually, even advising the Cyclops to use a more mobile weapon in its next life. At this moment, the arrogant centaur roared. He channeled his power into his arrow of light. The overwhelming spiritual power astonished both Ku and Julius. He would kill all three of them with a single strike. Strangely, Alva wasn't afraid at all. He knows that bigger doesn't mean stronger. The two girls behind immediately unleashed their spirit technique, making Alva's cold sword suddenly stiffen and shine brilliantly. Bursting light sword was buffed with an auxiliary skill, diamond-shattering flame. The moment Alva's sword struck the centaur's giant arrow, it created a terrifying explosion. The prisoner nervously wondered if the strange red-haired man had been taken down. Of course not. Alva burst out from the smoke and dust. The centaur hastily fired a lightning arrow. Unexpectedly, Ku had done something unnecessary. That was to ambush him. The centaur was horrified to realize the dragon girl could move again. The terrifying thing about this centaur's arrow was that the moment he released the bowstring, it hit the target almost simultaneously. Yet Ku narrowly managed to dodge it. Ku just gave a sly smile, because Judas had launched a frontal attack the moment he turned around. 2 against 1, he was unable to defend himself. These sisters are truly full of schemes. The centaur's face clearly showed exhaustion and anger. Just then, Alva also climbed up from the bottom of the slope. The large centaur was quickly overwhelmed by their superior numbers and eliminated on the spot. Then, the prisoner was tied up. At this moment, Ku asks him to shatter the pendant on his chest. When these contract stones are shattered, a spirit user will lose their connection to the spirits. Alva notices that the other guy's stones are much smaller than his own. Now shatter it completely when contracted spirits are defeated. Part of the gem gets damaged. Then he swung his sword up without any hesitation. Meanwhile, a green-haired woman is crying and apologizing for failing to eliminate the dungeon intruders. Ankila has to remind her that their mission is to create a place of atonement, not to be concerned with winning or losing. This girl is Nawa, an executor from the Beacon organization. Ankila was also unhappy about something else. These words made Nawa a bit scared, but in reality, it was just a crooked tie. These two really had too much time on their hands. Incidentally, they also thought that Champion was certainly no ordinary person. It could be called an abnormal situation beyond expectations. The joy in Ankila's eyes made Nawa curious. Sure enough, this lowly had illicit desires for naive boys, and that they had been waiting for someone like that for hundreds of years, so much so that their sanity was about to crack, to the point of going mad, just to find the X factors that would help her eliminate the opposition. And from there, the sound of a new era began to stir. At that moment, Ankila appeared and praised them, saying that everyone had done a great job. Julius believed she was only there to mock them, but in reality, she was there to introduce her subordinate, this idiot Nawa. Ankila hoped they would get along, as they would be working together for a long time. Alva was the first to object to this arrangement. To make up for it, Ankila revealed that she had brought a gift for them. She snapped her fingers. Immediately, the two spirits began to glow. What's happening? Ku's arm transformed into a dragon form, the effect of the new spirit technique, Dragon Scale. As for Julius, the new spirit technique, Diamond Enhancement, appeared. It seems the spirit techniques lost from using the forbidden art have been partially restored. Alva saw that they seemed to be doing better. Ku said that spirit techniques are the combat abilities of spirits like them. For example, this dragon scale. The earlier battle might have ended with just scratches. Alva realized that this Ankila might have what the others had lost, but she refuted it, saying their abilities were lost from using the forbidden art. She had only gifted them a little power. Hearing this, Nawa started shouting, calling Alva insolent for daring to think Lady Ankila was a thief. Her loud mouth was immediately shut by Ankila. She then congratulated them on conquering the path of atonement, but added that this was only the first step of their journey. The depths of the spirit labyrinth are still far away. We expect you all to have the determination to carve out a path. The real beginning starts here, and she wished them a pleasant journey. Stepping through that door, they arrived at a place filled with light. There were people coming and going, looking like a normal and prosperous city. Alva was surprised, wondering what this place was. He thought they were supposed to arrive at a dungeon's gate or some sort of entrance. Ku then explained that this was the labyrinth's safe zone on the first floor, called Spirit City, Ganzelgarn. Julius wanted to find a place for them to sit and talk, and so they went to a nearby shop. Once inside, Alva was even more surprised. This place was filled with books. Books were a luxury in Alva's world, and the receptionist was a talking book. It was a spirit book, and Julius wanted to rent a private room. This place was so unfamiliar to Alva. He had never seen so many books, and you've never met a talking object before. Julius said that because this is the spirit world, the cities also develop thanks to this power. For example, plant spirits help with growing trees to make paper easier, while book spirits can copy manuscripts using a duplication technique. The spirit world makes cultural development easier than the human world. But Alva wondered why they returned to Layer 0 when they had already cleared 10 dungeon layers before. Ku said that they should have started from this city, and now she just wants them to fight together from the beginning. While the two were happily chatting, Julius suddenly screamed, angry because that guy dared to name Kuna. Alva had nothing to deny. Kuna said that this was a name she had given herself since birth, but now she preferred to be called Ku by her master. Alva casually agreed at once. She seemed very happy about this small thing, but someone was not happy. Julius, extremely unhappy. It was already dark. Ku wanted to show him how brilliant the sky was here. Alva looked up in awe without blinking. This sky must be brighter than Alva's world. But that sister-obsessed girl was still angry, believing Alva was seducing her precious younger sister, and that he needed to be isolated immediately. Ku pulled out the bag of treasures she had kept from the bandits. Then, they decided to use the power of money to buy these luxurious amenities. Alva took a shower. He even tried to drink the water from it, believing he was being drowned in money. After his shower, he was surprised to see the other two still waiting outside. It turned out there was still something important Ku needed to tell him. That's why they used the forbidden spell. They wanted you to know everything, including who their enemy was. After listening, Alva could pass judgment, the great enemy of the entire spirit world, about the great monster called the opposition. That's why they used the forbidden technique. In the past, in a certain village, magical projectiles rained down from the sky. Then upon landing they exploded, creating a horrifying scene. Many villagers were injured or killed. They were completely consumed by despair and fear. The village elder seemed to understand what was happening. It was a whale-shaped evil spirit, an opposing power that had awakened. With overwhelming power, it destroyed an entire village in a single blow. The beastmen could only stare in fear. The village chief declared the village was no more, and that everyone should evacuate. At that moment, Ku stepped up to face it, despite Julius's attempts to stop her. That monster attacked her directly. That was also when Ku resorted to the forbidden spell. That is the context for this whole story. After listening, Alva could only remain silent. In short, opposition is a colossal ancient spirit that has sown death and destruction for hundreds of years, a great calamity for the entire spirit world, the human world. It is sometimes called an evil god that will destroy both worlds. That opposition has awakened from its long seal. Naturally, even if tens of thousands of ordinary spirits gathered, they wouldn't stand a chance against its strength. The situation was worse than Alva had thought. This village was originally created to reseal the enemy if it were to awaken. Alva began to understand that the forbidden technique Ku used was related to the seal, but Ku said that it wasn't enough to be considered a seal, because only spirits with special qualities have the ability to perform that seal. They are called sealing shrine maidens. The village had recruited and nurtured talents. Julius proudly said that she was also one of the candidates, but Alva appeared unconvinced. That was too rude, and Julius grabbed him by the collar and yelled at him. However, if the village had made preparations, why did they still fail? Julius said that the preparations were insufficient, because after hundreds of years of peace, they had underestimated the opposition's strength. The power of the priestesses was no longer enough, while the opposition was still rampaging everywhere. So Ku was left with no choice but to use that technique, that is, forcibly teleporting the opposition to the depths of the spirit labyrinth. Julius was extremely proud of this talented younger sister. If Ku had to exert so much effort, Alva could understand that its power was difficult for even thousands of spirits to match. Realizing Alva was subtly complimenting her made Ku a little embarrassed. This girl was clearly too sensitive to what Alva said, which made Julius a bit surprised and apprehensive, and their use of the forbidden spell led to their punishment. The price to pay had 3 conditions. First, the user's spiritual power is depleted, making them weak and turning them into a small dragon. Second, they are randomly teleported to the human world. Third, they are indirectly executed through the path of atonement. Luckily for Ku, she had recovered part of her power thanks to the contract with her master, and Julius was punished for using a forbidden spell to teleport to the human world to find Ku. It could be said that the forbidden spell Julius used was quite a minor one. None of them have fully recovered yet, but the good news is that the punishment is over, so they will quickly proceed to the next objective. That is the 18th floor of the spirit labyrinth, to return to that village, and confirm everyone's safety, and confirm the power to release the sealed priestess's power. It means the trainee shrine maidens need to return to their village to strengthen their powers. Ku clasped her hands pleading with her master, asking him to agree to go with them to that hidden village. Alva gulped, not because of the girl's chest, but because no one had ever begged him for anything before. And so Alva boldly agreed at once, making Ku happy. But Julius told them not to make such a hasty decision, advising Alva to think it through carefully, because once Alva got involved in this, his life would become twisted and miserable. Ku suddenly realized her sister was not wrong. Ku looked at Julius differently, not as the usual doting older sister, but as a profound person. Alva found these words to be a bit too cautious, while Ku started to give him another choice, to take the treasure and go enjoy himself. As Ankila had said, the spirit labyrinth was the place that makes all wishes come true. The adventurer's purpose was to find the holy relic in the spirit labyrinth. They asked Alva what he ultimately desired in the labyrinth. Alva didn't know how to answer. The next day, he still hadn't figured out his wish. I was a slave. I had no freedom, no rights, not even my life. Ku saved me from there. I was freed. Alva sighed, realizing he had no wishes of his own. A dream of great wealth? No, that wasn't it. It held no real meaning for Alva. He went up to the high wall. He cast his gaze across the entire city. He had never seen such a beautiful sight. Could his dream be to travel and see the world? No. He understood that simply following others without a purpose of his own wasn't right. Alva felt empty. While he was lost in thought, he he suddenly heard a noise from the restaurant behind him. Inside, someone was shouting loudly, believing that having to wait 2 minutes was a sign of disrespect. Belford Sama, the leader of Rebellion Storm, declared that his orders were absolute. The waitress could only apologize for the delay and ask for more time to prepare the food. The people around heard the name Rebellion Storm and knew they had a bad reputation but were very strong and dangerous, so they stayed away. They just felt it was unfortunate and pitied the waitress. He was even ready to start a fight with the other customers nearby as well. No one is allowed to eat before him. The brave female employee rushed out, threatening to report to the authorities for harming her customer. The madman then wanted to get physical with the little girl as well. The little girl had resigned herself to her fate, but suddenly a strange person came, picked up the food and said it was such a waste. This behavior was unacceptable in Alva's eyes. Then he asked who that lunatic was. The lunatic widened his eyes and loudly introduced himself as a veteran spirit user who had cleared 30 floors of the labyrinth. Alva found it strange and asked why a spirit user didn't have a spirit with them, and what was so special about clearing 30 floors of the labyrinth anyway. These words enraged the guy. He wanted to draw his sword. The waitress screamed, while the dazed man had swung his sword at Alva. Unexpectedly, Alva used only 2 fingers, and was able to push his blade aside. Then a warm hand, as fast as light, pried his mouth open. Next, another warm hand shoved a loaf of bread straight into his mouth, with a slightly gentle force. The side story at the restaurant ends. The young waitress thanks him, and praises Alva's amazing action. She then approaches and asks if he is an adventurer, adding that she is also about to explore a dungeon for the first time. Alva feels a bit awkward, as if she has known him for a long time. The girl introduces herself as Tiny and welcomes him to Bond Cafe, and says that if Alva tells her stories about his explorations, she will treat him to coffee. Tiny was then very surprised, because he never expected them to be the same age. Alva was a little embarrassed because he knew his face made him look like he was 40. What was more surprising was that this was also Alva's first time exploring a dungeon. However, Tiny wondered if he was truly human, because his strength from earlier was anything but normal. Never mind that, Alva couldn't read the menu, so Tiny helped him by ordering a large soy vanilla latte with an extra shot, chocolate sauce, no whipped cream, and dark mocha chips. Tiny thought about asking Alva to team up for dungeon explorations. Alva said that he had another mission to attend to first. Then he recalled his dream. The question from the other two was still left unanswered. Alva told Tiny that he hasn't found any desire or aspiration yet. That is the very thing. Desire and belief are things that high-level adventurers often discuss. Tiny explained that those things can be considered a kind of motivation for adventurers. In the dungeon, there are many frightening things, like spirits with overwhelming power. Their hostility and killing intent press down on people, making their legs tremble. Only death awaits. And an aspiration, a dream, or something like that, is the very thing that helps them overcome that fear. These words were indeed easy to understand, helping Alva find the truth. Tiny didn't understand what drove Alva to this concept, but before he could say more, the staff brought their drinks over. Wow, very wow, leaving Alva utterly shocked. Looking at the expression on this maid's face, Alva's eyes were opened in bewilderment. Alva innocently asked, "Is this a legend, a perverted legend?" The other guy, upon hearing this, wasn't angry at all. He even took pride in it, saying, "Welcome to Cafe Bond, home of the legendary perverted staff member." Tiny immediately told his spirit to stop teasing Alva, as he was having problems. Tortle immediately sat down and offered to help. After all, he had overheard their conversation. Tortle loved teasing the rookies, but Alva's expression almost made him mistake him for a veteran. Then Alva asked about Tortle's strongest wish or conviction, for example, the desire to become a legendary cross-dresser. But no, this guy dreamed of becoming a hero. Help the weak, subdue the strong. The comic books from his childhood had given him these ideals. Then he wanted to become that hero, so he sewed his own costume. "I want to dive into the spirit labyrinth and get stronger and be like the hero in the picture book, accomplish my own justice." Sure enough, his passion moved Alva. Even a pervert has aspirations. Alva found him more admirable than himself. Alright, everyone understood Alva's problem. He added that he himself had only recently escaped slavery. That's why he was empty on the inside. He was lacking a sense of self, so perhaps he couldn't have any desires or beliefs. Could it be that his very nature was that of a slave? The other two were dumbfounded, looking at each other. Tortle immediately rejected the idea of Alva's slave-like nature. Tiny also said that he was not a slave by nature at all, because he had voluntarily stepped up to help her back then. No slave has the right to make a choice like that. Alva recalled the cool declaration he had made to Julius earlier. At the same time, Ku and Julius came looking for him, worried he had gotten into a fight because Julius had sensed a magical fluctuation. Of course, the two girls were shocked before they could finish their sentences. By the way, the generous Tiny would treat these two new friends as well. Ku would definitely eat a big piece of meat. Then, both sides introduced each other. Tiny also introduced that pervert, Tortle. Cosplay is his hobby. The lively chatter of the friends made Alva pensive. Perhaps this is the feeling of friendship. Friendship is sometimes so simple. This moment, here, in this place, would perhaps be the moment that Alva would cherish the most. Noticing how quiet Alva was, Ku went over to check on him. He looked at her, but said nothing at all. To others, it was just an ordinary life. But for Alva, it became his reason to fight. That was all he needed. With everyone gathered on this occasion, Tiny then suggested they form a party to explore the labyrinth. Julius had no objection, but it was still up to their master Alva. But Alva also agreed very quickly. The reason was very simple. Just for this present moment, for this semblance of a normal life, he would fight. The others were stunned to hear his words of determination. Ku was very happy about that. A few days later, they gathered in front of a skyscraper. Alva was surprised that the strange building was the entrance to the labyrinth of souls, especially its sharp peak. Tiny said that this was both the symbol and the pride of this city. Another strange thing was that Tortle was no longer wearing a maid outfit. Then the door opened. Tiny enthusiastically led everyone inside. Julius asked her master if it was all right for that little girl to be in charge. Of course, Alva paid no attention. They quickly completed the adventurer registration. The staff member also instructed them on the teleportation chamber. This was a true teleportation gate. From Tiny's explanation, Alva realized that the way it worked was similar to Ankila's skill. Then Tiny and Ku thought about the first place they should start. Meanwhile, Alva felt a sense of solemnity. The atmosphere was completely different from their usual dungeon runs. After all, this was the hardest dungeon in the world. They say there's no wish that can't be granted. All kinds of miracles occur. But in return, harsh trials await. But whatever it was, rookies like Tiny paid it no mind, believing they would overcome it together. The elderly Alva advised her not to have such baseless expectations. Then they stepped onto the teleportation platform. In an instant, Alva found himself standing under a blue sky. The sun was high in the sky. It's as if there's a whole different world in this dungeon. Ku explained that each layer in the labyrinth is an isolated space, with all sorts of different environments. It could be a desert, or it could be frozen. Leader Tiny told everyone to stay on high alert, because anything could happen here. Looking closely, there was indeed a rather fierce battle going on down below. That boy's spirit was being overwhelmed by the sheer number of fire rats. Although they weren't strong, their numbers were just too great. Julius watched with irritation, cursing the people below as idiots. The boy hurriedly used enhancement magic on his gorilla spirit. Ku thought that even so, the novice spirits couldn't withstand this situation. Tiny decided to step out. She wanted to imitate Alva's heroic act from that day, so she decided to intervene in the boys' fight. Ku watched intently, and saw the girl use the spirit technique, conditional orichalcum summon slime. Judas and Ku were both stunned that a rookie was able to summon an ultimate level slime. That fool Alva had no idea if it was something high level. Judas told him to look closely and he would understand. Under Tiny's command, the ultimate slime split into hundreds of pieces, simultaneously striking the horde of fire rats that were surrounding the boy. To put it simply, and making a conditional contract with an ultimate grade slime, the summon just now requires a level 30 job skill. But this is only the first floor. You could say, this girl is on a completely different level than other rookies. Now, Alva understood. Just one of Tiny's slimes had completely overwhelmed a massive legion of fire rats. The truth is, this girl has special circumstances. She received strict education as a spirit user, ever since she was born. The swarm of rats was quickly wiped out by the wide-ranging and precise attacks. That boy and his underlings could only gape in amazement. As for these two women, they were frozen in awe. Only Alva, a fool who had yet to grasp the measure of power in this world, was lost in thought. It could be said that Tiny is an elite among elites, produced by the Spirit City, one of the renowned top spirit users in the near future. The battlefield had been cleared up. Tiny immediately lectured the boy, saying that he had been too reckless. Even if it was the first layer of the labyrinth, he shouldn't let his guard down like that. The boy could only tearfully thank him. While Alva was trying to process the new words, Tortle continued to praise that Tiny was even more amazing than imagined. Tiny could easily break through to the 10th floor, and Julius was curious about Tiny's background. But the pervert intention intentionally kept quiet to build suspense, which angered Julius. The lecture seemed to be over, but before leaving, the kid looked back one more time at this red-haired guy. The group advanced to layer 2. Julius told her master to hold back this time and not to rush in, as he was their trump card. Secondly, instead of fighting, try to learn from Tiny. Alva did not object. In other words, Ku wanted her master to master the basics of a spirit user. Then she picked up a rope. Alva didn't understand what the rope was for. This made the other two burst out laughing. He and Ku were tied together with a long rope. Tiny explained that the rope was used for magic power reinforcement training. To do that, a spirit user needs to sense the power from their contracted spirit. And spiritual power is the very life source of a spirit like them. Moving the heart, maintaining body temperature, moving the body, everything is done through spiritual power. The key to mastering magic enhancement is to sense the spirit's life force. As for the cord he was wondering about, it is an item that makes sensing easier for beginners. Alva found this a bit superstitious, but Julius insisted that Ku's spiritual power would run through it. Tortle encouraged Alva, saying that magic enhancement is a fundamental skill and that he should try his best. Alva wasn't allowed to join the battle, so this was the only way he could support them. They quickly advanced to the 4th floor. The Alva team's main strength is Ku's explosive light power, and Julius's critical melee strikes. They quickly swept through the monsters with ease. Meanwhile, Tiny handled the defensive role very effectively. Tortle also proved to be a formidable fighter with his masterful spearmanship. They worked together seamlessly, only this idiot still hadn't contributed much. The same old problem. The mana had only just gathered in the palm of his hand. Everyone turned back to encourage him, but it only made Alva more annoyed. They reached the 6th floor just as night fell. Alva crawled out of the tent because it was time to change shifts. He was poured a cup of coffee, but he wasn't used to this bitterness. Tiny asked what he thought about his first day in the dungeon. Compared to Alva's experience with dungeons only in the human world, this was truly a 5-star experience. With item box magic and spatial storage, everything was too convenient. Ku always wanted to be praised more by him, just like a little cat. Tiny believed they would reach the 10th floor soon because their teammates were all so strong. Ku was a little surprised that Tiny thought the 10th floor was too difficult. Because Tiny heard that a powerful enemy, the ice armor, had appeared, they needed to be careful tomorrow. Alva felt a bit ashamed for not having contributed anything yet, promising himself to learn magic enhancement as quickly as possible. Ku placed both her hands on his cheeks, and asked if he could feel her body temperature, her life force, but he couldn't feel anything besides the cold of the night, and advised Ku to go to sleep soon. Tiny said she had a hunch that Alva would create something truly amazing. She couldn't prove it but trusted her intuition. Then the two girls got into the tent, leaving the watch to Alva. Ku didn't forget to remind him not to overexert himself. It was no problem for Alva. He had once worked for 2 consecutive months without a break, which astonished the other two. The moonlit night was beautiful. Alva sat alone, gazing at the stars. During his days as a slave, the moon was also there, yet he had never paid any attention to it. Perhaps even the freedom in his mind right now was a treasure to him. An ordinary life every day. Suddenly a stranger approached, with footsteps like shattering glass. This group was the spirits, ice living armor. Alva sighed. He didn't want to wake anyone up at this hour, so he had instructed the monsters not to make noise and disturb others who were sleeping. The next morning, Tiny stepped out of the tent with his jaw almost hitting the ground. She didn't understand what the hell had happened for ice to be surrounding them on all sides like this. While Alva said that nothing had happened, Tiny immediately declared that it was a lie. Julius felt a chill down his spine because this bastard had actually done it. Only a few fragments of the monsters were left on the ground. But there was one problem. The coffee had gone cold. In the following battle, Alva was very determined, teaming up with Ku. It's just that their expressions were a bit exaggerated. The opponent was just an F-rank carnivorous plant. Tiny was a bit worried about Alva, because he was still too much of a newbie in this profession. It's just that the scene from this morning still haunted her. There was no way Alva could have defeated that horde of monsters alone. What is he hiding, after all? Tiny was sure that he was hiding a secret. While these two both knew what had happened, Alva just thought that he was completely normal. Finally, they reached the 10th floor. This floor's boss is a 4-armed minotaur, possesses superior physical strength. While Julius engages in close combat with it, Ku acts as the marksman from the rear. The bullets of light are just a smokescreen. The real damage dealer is Tortle. Tiny summons another large bear. Responding responsible for tanking for the entire team. Alva soon realizes that the monster is quite clumsy with its 4 arms. If it used its entire body as a weapon, it would be much more dangerous. He also points out an opening when the monster swings an arm to attack, and Julius immediately understands. Alva's hands were itching, wanting to jump in for a few warm-up moves, but his 2 disciples disagreed. Just a suggestion from him was more than enough for them to take down this creature. Julius charged forward on its left side, while Tortle attacked from the rear right. In the center was Ku's barrage of ranged attacks. The monster was completely overwhelmed by the firepower. Every one of its openings was thoroughly exploited. Ku decided to finish it off with a close-range explosive light fist, creating a massive explosion. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. But suddenly, a voice shouted for Ku to get back. Just then something sharp zipped past, and fortunately, she dodged it just in time. The attacker was none other than that loser from the other day. Alva didn't recognize him, which made him even angrier. This guy had used the boy to track down the group's whereabouts. Julius looked disappointedly at the ungrateful boy and cursed. He declared he was here to teach these rookies a lesson. Then he kicked his useless teammate aside and declared he would take them on alone. Tiny warned Alva to be careful because he had hidden his spirits at the cafe, but he was truly skilled, and he hadn't exaggerated about his feat of clearing 30 floors of the labyrinth. Then he summoned his spirits, all of which were large and powerful. Julius told everyone to get ready. The 2 sides immediately charged into battle. Tortle faced the Tiger Beastman. He was only at layer 15, while these spirits had all reached layer 30. Julius thought that it would be difficult for them to win in a direct confrontation. Meanwhile, Ku confronted the beetle. It's very fast, using its speed to overwhelm her. Not only that, its attacks also contain venom, which is very troublesome. The loser declares he won't let them die easily. Instead, he will torment them in hell. Tiny's tank bear has been tightly constricted by the centipede. Just then, Alva notices something, making Julius curious. He seems to have understood something, about something called a bond. Ironically, the more exhausted Ku gets, the more clearly he feels it. Her spiritual power blazes up as fatigue accumulates, and as breathing becomes rough and blood flow speeds up. He can feel life. He understands that sensation well because he's experienced it many times. When blood flows, when death approaches, when in a pinch. He felt it more and more intensely. Alva seriously began to unleash her magical power, the sensation of life blazing up. In that moment, Ku was startled. She felt her being infused with a boundless amount of mana. The loser thought that enhancing magical power was nothing special, but it seemed he was wrong. Julius looked back to see Ku's mana violently flaring up. At this moment, the centipede charged at Ku. A claw clashed with a fist. The result, the claw was defeated. The loser was stunned by this extraordinary power. Tortle realized it was no longer magical enhancement. It was something even more powerful than magical enhancement. It was like a fit of rage. The other guy watched in horror as his beast was defeated in a single strike. The gem in his hand also shattered, but at that moment, Ku suddenly coughed up blood. Julius needed to seriously reconsider the situation. She then told Alva to stop immediately because this skill was hurting Ku, but it seemed Alva was also confused. And yet, up ahead, Ku still wanted to continue. Ku yelled even louder than before. She looked like she was on the verge of losing control. Ku's eyes turned white once again, as if to declare that she could not stop. The reason was because she didn't want to disappoint her master, the one who achieved the unprecedented feat of defeating spirits, a superhuman. Ku thought, a mediocre spirit is unnecessary for him. Only the strongest spirit can stand beside the strongest master. He can go anywhere with his own power alone. So, to put it extremely, Ku would never let her master walk alone, no matter the cost. She would not stop, would not run away. Alva couldn't understand what was behind this effort of hers, but he could feel this strong determination. Alva immediately went all out. His magical power erupted, growing stronger and stronger. Ku was determined not to let her weak self be devoured by this power. Ku decided on a tactic, to use her own strongest ultimate skill, to fight against this very power within her. Tiny's whole body trembled. She had never seen a scene like this. An enraged spirit, with its power continuously increasing. No one knew exactly what was happening. Right after that, a turquoise gem appeared on the back of Ku's hand. It seemed the chaotic mana had been brought completely under control. Tortle and Julius realized those were blue dragon scales. The loser saw that Ku's aura had dissipated, and immediately ordered the green spider to charge. This was a perfect opportunity for Ku to test this power. Her hand lit up in a controlled manner. The usual golden light was replaced by the azure of concentrated mana. The spider was instantly smashed to pieces, with just a single strike. The next one to die is this centipede. Ku used a long-range emission attack, and with just a single blow, the beast shattered into 1,000 pieces. The loser was shocked because the rookie group was abnormally strong. Ku has successfully tamed her master's power, and achieved a technique called Azure Light Dragon Scale. The other guy believed that the spirit was just spouting nonsense. Alva declared that reality had proven everything. Ku was the strong one while he was just the weak one. Now Alva orders Ku to take down the last monster. And so, in that guy's horrified gaze, Ku once again defeated the tiger with a single blow. The fool was also hit by a punch from Alva, sent flying for over 10 meters, knocked unconscious on the spot.